Hey, it's Jake Jordan with the Productive Point of View, and today I interview a really cool guest named Dennis Mortensen, who is the owner, the founder and CEO of a company called X.AI. And of course, the stuff that he's talking about is artificial intelligence, which is really cool. But what's even more fascinating is the way he decided to approach AI and to be really single focused on a specific thing around that. And so what you'll hear is Dennis talk about being world class at one thing and not necessarily going wide and getting spread out, but really going deep. And then another thing that you will hear from Dennis is that he has a system to focus. So instead of just gritting his teeth and white knuckling his day and trying to repress all the entrepreneurial or good ideas he has a system that you'll hear about to help him really clear out his mind and be that single-minded focus. And then last, he talks about growth and how he's grown things to date and how he has a no end date policy on his current business. So let's go ahead and get started and hear about the cool things that Dennis is doing with artificial intelligence to help you with your business. Let's go. Hey, and welcome into the podcast today. This is your host, Jake Jordan of the Productive Point of View. And I have with me a new acquaintance who I think you'll find very interesting. Dennis, how are you today?
I think I'm happy, and thanks much for having me.
Absolutely. So Dennis, tell us a little bit about what you do and what you guys specialize in.
Sure. So I'm the CEO and founder of a company called X.AI, and we've spent the last 3.5 years in the basement trying to figure out how to engineer this intelligent agent that can schedule meetings on your behalf. So that when you send me an email and say, hey, Dennis, I'm going to be in Manhattan in August, I can reply back and say, you know what? I'd love to meet up. I've CC'd in Amy and she can help put something on in my calendar. Once you're here, I click send. I also click archive. And now it's Amy's job to have this conversation with you really on when are you going to arrive? At what time? What is my address? And upon conclusion, send us an invite. And it's not that you haven't heard about this before. You can really buy this product today if you got $60,000. It's called an assistant.
All right.
It's just that most of us can't afford that. So we're trying to democratize that and sell it as something for where it's not a luxury anymore.
Interesting. Cool. So how did you get to that spot where you decided you were going to get into some AI? Is that a background you have?
So we've been, sadly, because we're getting older in the data space for the last 20 some odd years. So our last venture was in the predictive analytics space for media. The venture before that was in the enterprise web analytics space, was got acquired by Yahoo. So we certainly have some affinity for data, and we might even pat ourselves on the back and say, we sometimes know how to extract value from data. And it's not that we wanted to be an AI company. It's just that we wanted to remove the pain of setting up meetings. And it just seemed to us that the only obvious solution would be that of an agent.
Okay. Interesting. So, I went through the process too, booking this meeting with you with a guy named Andrew, which it's interesting, number one, that we're getting comfortable calling, artificial people. And then number two, the kind of the learning curve that comes with that. So tell us a little bit about some of the learning curve along the way as you've been doing this.
That's very rapidly a 4-hour response, but let me just pick a few things that we've certainly learned over the years. One is that picking a vertical and then being able to define really the universe in which you exist sounds simple. So I'm in the meeting scheduling universe. And in that universe, you have concepts like new meeting, cancel meeting, reschedule meeting, you're optional, I'm mandatory, change time, and so on and so forth. And it seems like a thing for where you and I could go to the whiteboard and kind of get a rough draft up in the first half hour. That was much more complex than I think we ever imagined. And years in, we were still refining that understanding of that universe. And remember, if we can't define it, how can we even collect any data? If we can't collect any proper data, how can we create any models, as in machine learning models? So that kind of very first step that seemed so easy to take turned into being one of those major obstacles. So that's certainly kind of perhaps not a learning your listeners really care about, and just more therapy for me and telling you. And then there's more of an interesting learning as well, which is that to me, at least initially, if I rewind 3 years, this idea that I thought agents would be self-explanatory, just because, say, a travel agent or a personal assistant who manages your calendar were concepts that you were already exposed to, as in you could call your travel agent on the phone and say, hey, can you help me get a couple of tickets to Miami for the weekend, please? Or you can ask Tom in the front office, hey, get something on the calendar with Dennis when I'm in Manhattan. And I thought it would just be immediately understood, as in no education, no onboarding. I just tell you, the name of the agent is Amy, end of onboarding. That was not true. As in, it actually takes real onboarding, and it takes some love to kind of bring you to the other side where you understand how to take advantage of this agent. And that is something which I think we're still trying to kind of perfect. So how do I bring you in? How do I sit you down? How do I have you tell your agent how you want your agent to work for you? Once the agent doesn't do what you kind of expected, where was the issue? Is that because you don't know how to employ somebody or how to educate them? Because that's kind of on you now with the agent. So that has been just a fascinating journey.
Being world-class at one thing is something that we talk about a lot here at the Productive Point of View, and it's no different for Dennis. So listen here as he talks about how he has already and plans to continue to grow X.AI deep and be the best of the best at what they do. It sounds like it, because it would seem like it would be a little bit easier to manipulate technology versus someone you hire, like you said, for $60,000 to do kind of what you want. So that's interesting. So you found the vertical, you saw a way to solve it, and clearly you're doing all right. You're here. You've got a product that I've already previewed, which is amazing. So what are you finding are kind of some opportunities for you to grow this year?
I think you would agree that it's somewhat easy to be half-assed at 7 things, and it's almost impossible to be world-class at 1 thing.
Correct.
I am at least trying to be world-class at 1 thing. So when we talk about expanding, we don't have any fantasies about, we could also do travel. I could also do your receipts. I could also do 15 other things that are really honest pain points. It's just not for us. All I want really is if you pull out your phone right now and look at those 17 events for next week, I just want to be the guy who put them there. Right. That is all we are chasing. That doesn't mean that we are not willing to imagine what we could do in the future, but anything we'll do in the future will be along this vertical. And instead of going wide, we'll just keep drilling deeper. So the agent probably should speak multiple languages. That seems obvious.
Sure. That's
a real challenge. 2, we probably want the agent to exist in other communication channels. As in, why can't I wake up Amy in Slack or over text messages or in Facebook Messenger or wherever you talk to somebody and you end up with, you know what, we should really get together. At that moment, the agent should just be ready and available.
Right.
And then lastly, I think you'll see us kind of do features that revolve around the event itself.
Okay.
So you and me meet up on August 4th, my birthday, and we've agreed that we should have sushi. Why did I log into OpenTable? If I told Amy that we're meeting up at 1 for sushi, you just log in and book the table. It's not necessarily rocket science. Or if I have a meeting in Midtown, why did I book the Uber? You know I'm going to Midtown. You booked the meeting, so you just booked the Uber, so it's here. Or a WebEx or a Zoom or 15 other things. So those are the dimensions you kind of see us expand on, not into kind of other elements. Just schedule meetings. No more, no less.
Often something else we talk about a lot here on the Productive Point of View is having systems to make you more productive. And specifically, Dennis here talks about his system for focus and what that looks like in everyday activities as he's out, and also how he applies it to his business to, instead of just push away all the natural inclinations to grow and do other things that your mind wants to do, which are really healthy. He finds a way to capture them and empty out headspace so that he can concentrate. So let's listen more to that. That's fantastic. I really feel like that's something that I personally have struggled with in the past, and I can see how that can be a huge distraction. So I love, let's dig into one of those specifically, because I love how, people who are in marketing are always looking for levers, right, to pull to either increase revenue or find new revenue channels. So just right there, you said two things that I heard. Number one is you're not going to automatically move to travel. You're still trying to be the best in this that you're doing. And you named 5 things I never would have thought of, but that's because you're focused on being grade A professional, right?
I think it's very easy to get distracted. And especially if you're an entrepreneur, you see opportunity everywhere. You're in line at Citibank and you're thinking, this is I should start a retail bank, right? And you probably shouldn't start a retail bank.
Right.
And that kind of eagerness to remove pain is something for where you have to put a system in place for where you immediately think, no, that's not for me. And I'll tell you my little system, and I'm not saying it's a brilliant one. And I have all the same fantasies like any entrepreneur next to me. But I immediately spot the pain, come up with some idea, because I still have another 3 minutes in line. And I just take that idea and I put it on a list. And they're one-liners. And I continue to pull them out of my head and onto the list so that whatever's in my head can be as pure as possible. And I know that I didn't throw away a good idea, because we're equally cocky and we think any idea we have is a good one. But I take the idea and pull it out and put it into a list. Then every 4 or 5 years, say I come to the end of the venture, we've had some exit, then I look at my list. Okay. And what you have is 10, 20 pages of one-liners. Some of them completely crazy. Some of them, Dennis, why so angry? Dennis, this is not a bad idea. It did get solved though. Right. So that's how I try to stay focused. That's
very interesting, because you're right. I think we do overestimate what we think we can do a lot of times. I know James Altucher in one of his books talks about a similar process. So I love that. It's something I think everybody can employ right away. And clear out some headspace.
I'm a huge fan of clearing out and making room for you to think about how to excel your business. I have one of those things which is not new. So I run inbox zero. Most of my friends will tell me, you're crazy. I don't see the value. Why would you even try to do so? But I've done so for a decade and a half. As in, when I leave, or at least when I walked in to this meeting room, I had 11 emails in my inbox. Before I leave tonight, it'll be at 0. And people will say, I'm not sure it's worth it. I'm not chasing inbox 0 per se. What I'm chasing is room to say, I don't have any other task. Right now, I can just look out the window with a Diet Coke and mull over, how can we make Amy and or Andrew even better? Or how can I attack this given market or test pricing on this particular segment? But there's room to think about it. There's not 11,200 emails for where I'm not sure, did I forget something, or is there something I should really follow up on? No, it's 0.
And then lastly, Dennis talks about how he has a no end date sort of policy for the projects that he works on, meaning that where a lot of people have a roadmap and goals and those are great things to grow by. If you have the idea that you have an idea that can continue to grow over time, you tend to have more ideas and things for revenue and opportunities to grow where you're at. So let's listen to him talk a little bit more about how that's helped him grow his business so far. That's good. That's good. So obviously distractions, something that we talked about already. The 0 inbox, it's a great, I have a very similar system through Gmail that I use, where you stack it out and get rid of it. So what would you say are some roadblocks to you improving the product, moving things along, that you are still running into?
This is probably going to be one of those products where there's never really an end date, right? There's no, today is the day for where we've done the 28 some odd features you would expect, and we can call it quits. Right. She can exist in her own right now. There'll be new ideas for new skills all the time. I do think though that outside of the kind of core utility which we are working on all the time, that we are still trying to figure out the best way to onboard people. And I'll tell you about a couple of challenges here, which I don't yet have the answer. So, like a human, Amy will make mistakes. But there's really two types of mistakes. There's real mistakes for where you said, Amy, could you be so kind to set something up come next week with Michael? And somehow she ends up not doing that, doing something else, not understanding the requests, any number of things. But there's also the perceived mistakes, as in she did everything correctly, but somehow you perceive it to be a mistake. I'll give you an example here. Amy, set something up tomorrow with Michael for half an hour, please. And then she sets up the meeting on Friday, and you're thinking, what the hell? As in, how hard can it be? How can you even use the word AI and not check if it's the right day? As in, it's not rocket science, guys. However, it could just be that she reached out to Michael, had a very long and elaborate chat, and figured out that Michael is actually coming back from Dallas and coming in at 5, couldn't make it. So set it up the very next day as early as possible. So me and Michael figured it out, but it was not a mistake. You just thought it was. And what we found is that people immediately assume that humans have applied some common sense, as in, oh, Michael probably couldn't do it, but immediately assume that machines made a mistake.
Right.
And that could even be, I'll give you another example here without getting too anal. You set up, say, your scheduling hours where you do 9 to 6, Monday to Thursday, you leave at 3 on Friday. So some version of that. Then you ask Amy to set up a meeting with somebody in Singapore. She sets up the meeting for 6:30. And again, you're thinking, hello, I asked you to do meetings between 9 and 6. That's an if then else type statement. So what the hell? Here, the guy's in Singapore. That's 12 hours removed from New York. So somehow she might have done a really spectacular negotiation and somehow persuaded him to get up at 6:30 a.m. And you were only having to stay half an hour later. So again, common sense applied. So we're trying to figure out how do we best convey some of the really clever, both product design and science that we've done, and you still understanding that, no, it's not within the parameters, but real life can't always fit within the parameters of how you want it to work because we're dealing with other human beings. So that's some of the kind of challenges that we're working on. I think there's so many examples for where it's almost inevitable that the agent will arrive. So I'm sadly old enough to remember that I took my CS degree mostly on the command line. And that was pretty much the only input or the only access to any type of machinery. And then we grew up mostly on the kind of graphical user interface, and perhaps of late, we can call the mobile interface a distinct UI paradigm in its own right. But somehow, we also agreed over the last almost decade that every software application ends up in the mobile device. I'm not sure that is necessarily true, that whatever pain I experienced should be solved within that mobile device. I'll give you one example here. So I go to San Francisco next week. It's 11 p.m. when I arrive, and I want a Diet Coke. So I'm sitting in that hotel room, and my first thought is not, hey, let me go to the App Store, find the Hilton app, and download and install it, set up an account, log in, find store, add Diet Coke to basket, click checkout. I said, that's not an app. I still have a need, though. And wouldn't it be lovely if there was just a big-ass number on the door, and I just text the downstairs lobby, hey, guys, can you bring up a Diet Coke, please? Or there's an Alexa in the corner. I can just scream Diet Coke, and then somehow magically a Diet Coke arrives in my room in 5 minutes. And that is the agent setting. And I think there's just a plethora of solutions right now that needs to move into this agent setting. We just happen to be working on scheduling meetings, but I think there's tens of thousands of little pain points for where an agent will just do a better job. Not everything. If I walk down the street, I actually still want a map and a little red dot for where I'm at on my mobile phone. That's a great app. But I think of the 2.5 million some odd apps, pick a number, could be 1 million, that should change into the new agent setting. So that seems to me like something that will happen, whether you and I like it I certainly like it, and we will move towards that.
Excellent. So kind of as we wrap here, I always like to kind of circle the plane and go, all right, based on what we're talking about here, you've got a very specific thing that's going to help people be more efficient, right? I have two-pronged question for you. First is, where do you see this going in the next year for you guys? And then the second part of that is based on that, how would you recommend people like you move toward the agents? Like, what are some steps they can take that way?
The next year, really, for us, is to take the 3 years of R&D that we've done, which we commercialized in 3 editions, a personal one, which is free, a pro one, which is for the single individual, some dude at Netflix in pain who can go sign up and use it right now, and the business edition, which is for SMBs, really, for where, hey, we're just an ad agency in Philly, we're 17 guys, you shouldn't be fiddling around with setting up meetings, you should just do that. So that's certainly what we're hunting. We just want more exposure on that and make it normal to use an assistant. Mm-hmm. So that is a push on our end. We'll continue to do all of our R&D, but that will be certainly a push on our end the next year. Mm-hmm. Now, on the exposure end, I will encourage everybody, even if they don't immediately get it, to try out some of these agents, because if they also believe that this is inevitable, that we will get there, the quicker you can get exposure to this, the better you will be set, or the better you will be prepared when they really arrive. And sure, go to X.AI and sign up for it. I'm biased, but you can find 5 other agents and really try them out. Try them out even when it does not work. Try them out even when you feel kind of a little bit awkward or a little bit pretentious because I'm only 23 and who am I? Why do I have an assistant, right? But force it upon yourself and even just write it out to the people that you might communicate with if there's other constituents included into it. Mm-hmm. Really do that. That, I think, will be fantastic exposure. I actually think, and again, I could have perhaps a quirky view in the future, but I actually think in the near-term future, we will go hire new candidates, not just on their resume on, so you went to Columbia and you've spent 3 years here, and this particular skill set is certainly something which we desire. Let's make you an offer. I think you will be somehow measured on not just who you are and where you went to school and your experience, but which agents have you picked up along the way? How did you train them? And how long did you work with them? Because I certainly am not paying you a 6-figure salary to come here and do email ping pong. Sure. So I would want you to tell me a story about 5 or 6 agents that you're bringing along with you.
Interesting. So yeah, a lot like PowerPoint skills or Excel skills in the past have been a requirement for certain positions. Yep. This could completely transverse a lot of different areas that way.
And I think it goes even one step beyond that, because there's certainly a difference between acquiring a skill and internalizing that skill and go from one job to the next and taking advantage of that skill. Then there's a next level here, which is you've employed an agent, you're paying for it, but you've trained it. So that means whatever data you've injected into that agent, preferences and so on and so forth, you bring that along with you. That means not only will I be paying you a salary, I'm probably going to be paying for the handful of agents that you have on payroll. So somehow I'm kind of hiring mini managers, because they're all having, a dozen some agents they employ, but I want them to have that.
Man, that's kind of for probably a lot of people to think you're not hiring a person, you're hiring a team of people, and this is one of them's human.
Yep.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a new one for me. It illuminates some new possibilities just in about the last 10 seconds. That's amazing. Cool. Dennis, man, I really appreciate the time today. Love what you guys are doing. I'm going to definitely keep on top of this, because I love your idea of getting out there and trying out new agents. Because I, like you, think it's inevitable. I think not only is it inevitable, it's an exciting time to know that we're going to be able to get rid of redundant tasks in the very near future and concentrate on the stuff that we're passionate about more often, and hopefully be better at what we do, right?
I think if people were really honest, go back and look at that job description, which had 7 some bullets. Look at those 7 bullets. Then look at what you do every day. I'm sure there's another 7 bullets which you have to do every day that was not on that initial list. Yes. And I think the agents will initially remove all the chores. This is not about making people unemployed or taking away one job over another. No, this is about finally have you do what you were supposed to do to begin with.
Yep, that's a great point. Cool. Well, Dennis, your website is X.AI, right?
You go to X.AI, big ass blue screen, one input field, you add your email, and you're off to the races.
And where can we find you on social media spouting your awesome stuff here?
I am everywhere under Dennis Mortensen, but if you go to Twitter, you'll see my opinion, whether you like it or not, often.
Okay, great deal. Well, thanks for being on the show today, Dennis, and hope to talk to you again soon.
This was fun. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in today. It's been another great episode with another awesome guest. We would love for you to subscribe to the podcast, because every week we're bringing in people who we feel like can really help you minimize the amount of time that you're spending and maximize the effectiveness of what you're already doing. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Tell a friend, and we'll see you again next week on The Productive Point of View.